right, so we are in the middle of August 2024. We wanted to bring to kind of our clients' connections a quick summary for kind of what we're dealing with from the NAR ramifications from the settlement. So super quick summary. March of this past year, there was a class action antitrust lawsuit that was, the verdict dropped down. Bunch of new changes coming in our industry. This is actually the 116-page, whole lawsuit deal that we can send anybody if they want to actually have some fun legal reading for it. But we just want to bring to what we're finding is we need to bring to our clients just quick summaries of kind of how we're dealing with it, how our clients are seeing it, day to day.
Yeah, so I think it's, what this is for. It's really for buyers and sellers. Ideally, we're trying to figure out, how does it affect sellers from a buyer standpoint, and from a seller standpoint, how it affects buyers. So
yeah, and piggybacking on that, I think what we've talked about all the time in the office is we need our buyers to understand how the sellers are dealing with changes, and we need the sellers to understand how it's different from a buyer perspective as well. So we're not attorneys, but we are successful real estate agents and brokers, and what we're trying to do is literally like from a layman's version, just tell people what we're seeing, from the street. And this is super new. We've tried to implement some things before they legally had to go into effect on the 17th of August, which is actually tomorrow. But we're seeing it and kind of bringing it. Stuff's going to change, but we just want to show it, today. So I know you're going to talk about just from a buyer perspective, how their experience is different.
Yeah. So to start off, I did watch all episodes of Suits. So I don't know if that helps.
Still don't qualify you as an attorney.
No? Okay. So from the buyer side, now buyers have to enter into a written agreement before ever touring a property. So meaning that they either have to go into some sort of written agreement, either a buyer agency or a customer agreement. We put together our own in-house with the help from ERA Corporate, and it's a one-page, simple, kind of makes it nice and easy, it's nice and quick, so we don't have to actually talk about commissions and who's paying for it and all that good stuff.
Well, we do talk about it. No, it's basically what it is. We got some good guidance from ERA, from our brand level and anywhere, the parent company. But interestingly, a lot of people thought we had to have a buyer agency agreement day one. It's not actually an agency agreement. So while we want to get a buyer agency agreement eventually with those clients, we've created something that's a little bit easier for them to palate, especially for people that we don't know. The crazy thing in our market, being a second home, a lot of clients from out of town, we meet people and we literally just met them that day, or they were our best friend. They're not going to care. They're going to sign an agency agreement with us, but that agreement it actually talks about the commissions, and basically it says they've got no commitment to pay us a commission. We're going to address that in the future. Ultimately we could lose out if we find a property that they love and there's not any commissions being offered. But it's a legal, it's an agreement that opens the door for that relationship to progress.
Yeah, and sometimes you might not, like you said, you meet somebody off the street and you've never met them before. You don't know if you want to go into a commitment with somebody, and you don't know if they want to work with you. So it's just kind of a simple way to kind of get the ball rolling and keep it moving. So, and then the other one, of course, is just the full buyer agency. And so the main thing with the buyer agency and how it's changed is a couple things, three options that you can choose from. One being, A, the brokerage fee comes solely from the buyer. B, the brokerage fee comes from the buyer, less the amount broker receives from seller or listing broker. Or C, seller or listing broker pays brokerage fee and buyer has no obligation to pay. So,
yeah, and we're going to talk about commissions a little bit more, and I'm going to talk about kind of from the seller perspective what it is, but I didn't get into all the details for what the actual ramifications for those changes in the MLS. How the commissions are going to change. So the point of the antitrust lawsuit revolves essentially, a lot of it is around buyer agent commissions, and just the transparency for how buyer agents are being paid. And so that's, ultimately, which is the transparency that came out of this is actually a good thing overall. Buyers know what we're getting into. It's frankly too early to know how things are going to change. Again, historically, in the past, 5 years ago, you're our seller. The seller's basically, we would always say the seller paid the commission. to both parties. It's always been negotiable. That's what this lawsuit was all about. They basically said it wasn't negotiable. It was an antitrust trust deal that through the MLS we forced sellers to pay the buyer agent commission. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, what you just read and what we just showed you guys is now a new option, and it's an eye opener for buyers, right? Because they're like, hey, before they kind of thought of it as I didn't pay a commission, and now it's like at least our goal is to try to get that from the seller, right? And that's just how we're working it and how we're having to.
Yeah, there's going to be times where we're trying to maybe if you select option B, brokerage fee comes from the buyer less the amount of broker receives from the seller, so possibly the seller is offering 2.5%. The buyer, on our buyer agency agreement we put 3, so there's that 0.5% that someone's got to pay for. So in some instances it could be the buyer paying it, or it could be some things we do we would probably just not have to worry about the 0.5%. But so that's just kind of something that we're going to be working with, and it's just kind of the new real estate landscape as we move forward. And
so we're bringing it back to so the seller needs to understand what your buyer's seeing. So you're hitting the streets looking at properties today with a buyer. The seller needs to know that buyer is asking for every property. Is your seller paying a commission or offering a commission to a buyer broker or not? If you call somebody and they're not, then we need to go back to the buyer to say, hey guys, they're only offering a 1% commission. Can you guys make up the 2% difference and pay us? Which that's the real new thing, the new conversation we're getting into.
Right, and there's going to be times where you're going to have maybe new home buyers or what have you that can't afford to pay the agent plus all their down payment and closing costs and all that stuff. So there could be times where if a seller is not offering any commission at all, and we let our buyer know that, hey, they're not offering anything, do you still want to see this property? They're going to be like, well, no, we can't afford it, so we'll skip it.
Yeah.
So I mean that kind of leads into kind of the seller side of it.
So the seller side of it. So this is kind of a seller buyer. One of the main challenges that we're dealing with the new rules that go into effect is that in the MLS we no longer have a buyer compensation field. It doesn't mean that a seller can't offer a buyer broker commission, but literally that field in our MLS is gone. So as of Monday of this week, we're looking at properties for our clients. We have no idea whether the seller's offering a commission or not. We have to reach out to the agents every time individually, the listing agent directly, to find out whether they're offering a commission or not. But the fact that field's gone in the MLS just creates a lot more logistics on the back end for us. Not a big deal. We'll figure it out. But then describing, so what happens then for the conversation I'm having with our sellers, because some people, frankly, we say, hey, have you heard about the NAR settlement? Do you know what's going on? 25% of the people are like, I've heard a little bit about it. Most people haven't. So the way I've described it to our sellers was, okay, let me rewind before this went down. The way that we had operated in the past is, okay, I'm going to sell your property, Mr. Seller. Typically, we've done let's call it a 6% commission. We're going to offer 3 to a buyer agent, and then we're retaining 3% on our end. So you're paying our broker 3%. We were offering that compensation 3% to a buyer agent. We no longer can put that 3 in the MLS. It's 100% negotiable. If you don't want to pay a buyer broker, you don't have to. Our side of the listing is 3%. It's up to you whether you want to offer a buyer a commission or not. I've got personally 40 plus listings right now. Every one of my sellers still fully wants to offer a buyer agent commission. The truth is we're going to see how this evolves as we move, into this year, into next year, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months out, how that shakes out. And the conversation I've had with sellers, just trying to break it down. Again, we're fumbling through the conversations and trying to be the best professional we can with it, is that, we know that 95% of agents have 95% of buyers have an agent. Of those buyers that are coming to us, I'm going to say after you factor in down payment, closing cost, all that kind of stuff, this is a guess. I'm going to say 80% of people don't have the ability to then pay their agent an additional 3% on top of that. So if we don't offer a buyer commission at all, are we eliminating 80% of the buyers? That's just the reality. I don't know what that answer is. What I tell our sellers too, do you care about your sale price, your gross sale price? Do you want to be the highest priced house in the neighborhood? and beat your neighbor sale price wise? Do you care about what you're paying a buyer agent, or do you care about what your net proceeds are? Most people logically, like, you should care about your net proceeds. So if we can factor in that commission, offer the commission to a buyer agent and make it the most appealing as possible to bring as many buyers and eyes on that property, that's really the goal for us. But understanding that we actually, the only other spot too that you can offer a commission is actually on our brokerage website for our listings, and that's it. So we've created that platform. We have that ability to get it out there for it. So then the other thing, this is kind of just throwing this out there, the other new term that we're dealing with a lot are concessions. So concessions are, traditionally we thought of concessions, the seller concessions, to help a buyer's closing cost, or hey, I admit that my house needs to be painted, so we're going to offer a $5,000 concession to a buyer to have the house painted after closing type of deal. We have a new section on our contracts, on our sales contracts that changed just 2 weeks ago, that really addresses concessions. So the point with that from the attorney's level was that if we're not offering a commission, can we offer a buyer concessions? So it's not called a commission, it's called concessions, that then they are able to use to pay back to their buyer agent. So that's a buzzword we're telling. Again, we've had a few transactions basically since these new docs came out, and the concessions haven't come up yet. But that's something.
But the issue could come up, kind of in the lending world, right?
Yeah, the lending stuff too. That's where a lot of the lenders are. They're changing different programs to be able to figure out ways can we factor in commissions, and it's sort of new. So we'll probably bring some lenders in and talk with lenders and let them to explain it from their level as well. But yeah, concessions, commissions. There's a lot of different ways around it. But that's a lot we kind of hit on. But basically, what we wanted to do, it's funny. I heard a stat the other day, like across the country, there'll be somewhere between 4 to 4.5, maybe 5 million transactions this year. Two sides to that transaction. So there's basically 10 million people in the U.S. that are dealing with a purchase or a sale of a property. Those are really the people right now that are being impacted with, from this. The other few 100 million people in the country, they don't even care about this at all. But if you're thinking about real estate in the future, how this changes, I think that's the reality wise. I think if anybody tells you they know exactly how that's going to change and how it's going to shake out in 6 months, they just don't freaking know.
I'm heading out in a couple hours, and I plan on kind of talking about this to some clients, and probably fumble my way through it. But I think as time goes on, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, I think we'll learn more, and maybe we'll do another episode and just try to explain a little bit more for you. And yeah.
That's it. So any questions we can answer for you, you want to talk through it, just let us know.